and guarantees are so important that I'm going to ask the same question to another person here on the panel. So, Alejandro, I'm going to ask you the same questions that we just asked Munif, and what realistic tools are available today, in your opinion, to provide payment security and reduce risk?
Yeah, and I think I'll build off of what Monif said. I think a huge part of it is the partnerships, right? So ensuring that you have the right people involved, because de-risking a lot of these investments it's a tough thing. So you need to have government, donor, development finance institutions, and especially the private sector. And so I think when thinking about the risks, it's important to, before you actually get to solutions, think of what are the key risks that are out there, what are the main barriers that are preventing us from addressing those risks, and what are the key solutions that would actually help us solve that. So I think if I can structure this in a way, I would say you can start with one of the main issues that Munif mentioned, which is credit risk, right? So what is the issue if the off-taker is actually not able to pay? And so what are some of the solutions that we see across the energy value chain? Starting from big grids, you can have especially the government guarantees. So ensuring that the government is coming in and guaranteeing if the utility is not able to be the off-taker there. And this is where you can also have DFIs, development finance institutions coming in and helping back that guarantee. On the commercial and industrial side of things with private developers, we've also seen, for example, corporate backstops. So ensuring that, for example, if there are subsidiary companies that aren't able to be the key off-takers, can the parent company step in and guarantee a portion of that money as well? And finally, on the rural energy, and I think, I don't know if it was who mentioned it exactly, but you can do some things around ring fencing and making sure that you're setting aside the right amount of money to ensure that the private developers are able to actually access that money. So if you set up an escrow account for these mini grids, you're ensuring that the private sector is actually able to get that money and are willing to actually finance those projects. So that's mainly on the currency risk. Another one that I think we haven't mentioned but comes up a lot is, for example, liquidity risk. So what happens if, I think on average, you might have people who aren't able to pay 3 to 6 months worth of the offtake. So how can you actually structure it to maybe give a bit more breathing room to some of these companies that aren't able to get that money? So in this, what we've seen, for example, is letters of credit. For example, a commercial bank guaranteeing to provide the money if there aren't payments for those 3 to 6 months. And usually this could be backed as well by some development finance institutions, potentially as well, like setting aside a reserve account. So upfront, making sure that you have a debt service reserve account where you have enough money that if there is a liquidity crunch, you can address that. So I think in all of these risks that I've talked about, and similar to what Monif said, it's a combination really of having the right development finance partners, the right government, and the private sector, and I think really addressing what are the key risks we have and what are tactical solutions that we can do to help solve that.
Thank you, Alexander. Also, in terms of guarantees, for example, is it typical for the final customer, especially in case of commercial and industrial customers doing rooftop building, is it acceptable for the final customer to provide some of those guarantees? Is that usually done?
I mean, it's usually also done with, in combination with these development finance institutions. So for example, the corporate backstop, when we talked about, is essentially when you bring in like the parent company. But in a lot of some of the projects that we've also structured around these CNI projects, you do want to bring in the development finance institutions, and especially in a place like Yemen, you want to make sure that the right actors are involved. So it's a combination, but I would say you definitely need big involvement from the development finance institutions.
المؤتمر الوطني الأول للطاقة نحو وطن متعاف بطاقة مستدامة.